Hi, I'm Drew.
And I'm Sam.
And welcome to Drewling Samantics.
Ah, lovely. There we go.
Nicely done, mate. I had feared that you might trip over something, spill your coffee, smash your glasses, knock the sign off the wall, make all the cushions scatter everywhere. I thought it might be quite a dramatic entrance.
Well, I know to what you are alluding. I mean, it's not that I haven't done that in the past. I have. The sign's fallen down. We've had spillages and goodness knows what else. But compared to a gentleman who's going to visit us today, our lovely guest today, compared to that, I am a mere amateur. I'm not in his league in any way, shape, or form. It's going to be incredibly entertaining to hear his story and what he does. And in fact, he's here waiting in the waiting room right now. Are we going to delay any longer?
No, I mean, we couldn't have timed that any better. It may be a very brief intro. And by the way, hello, mate. Cheers.
Oh,
how you doing?
Hello, mate. Yeah, there we go. We'll have a quick slurp before we open the doors to our wonderful guest.
But no, I absolutely agree. If he is here, let him in.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the wonderful, wonderful Pete Løvstrøm. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. He's slipped in seamlessly from the waiting room. Please meet lovely man I've had such wonderful times working with. Ladies and gentlemen, Sam, please meet the wonderful Pete Løvstrøm. Nice to have you with us, mate.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Yeah, what a brilliant opportunity for you. No, I'm joking. For us to welcome you to the show, mate. Thank you so much for coming on, Pete. Obviously, I've heard lots about you from Drew, but the people who won't perhaps have heard so much, and if they haven't, poor them. But we do have a few audience members out there who will be listening or watching us right now that may be going, either I recognise that face, but I can't quite think, or go, no, I know the name, but where's it come from? So best thing to do to start with, if you don't mind, Pete, is just tell everyone where the bloody hell they might know you from or what they might have seen you doing, why you're doing it.
When people usually ask me, they say, "Oh, I recognise you from somewhere," and you know, my sort of standard answer is, "Oh, do you watch pornography?" And and then they're quite shocked by that, obviously. But it gets a laugh, and it always goes down well. But yeah, I mean, where do I start? Okay, I was born in Fulham. At a very young age, and I'm half English. I'm half Danish. My dad was from Copenhagen. My mum was English. My mum's still alive. My dad died about 10 years ago. And I grew up around Fulham. My mum's family all had greengrocer shops. So there was this particular greengrocer shop opposite Fulham Power Station that had about 3 generations of my mum's family in it. And that's where I grew up, and all my extended family was. So I was in Fulham and I was in Chelsea. I used to go to Chelsea football ground, and I was up and down the King's Road in the 60s and 70s, watching all the hippies, smelling all the incense and all that type of stuff. and went to school around there. Went to school in Fulham at the London Oratory School. It used to be the Brompton Oratory School, but they moved it to Fulham in 1970, I think it was. And I grew up around there. And as for kind of my introduction into the world of theatre, I didn't like school particularly. It was a very strict school. I went to an all-boys Catholic infant school, primary school, and grammar school, and very strict, very Catholic. I've got nothing against the Catholic religion per se, but I had issues with organised religion. I didn't particularly like it. I was okay at school. I didn't really like it. I didn't really like the subjects I did, because I got streamed into doing science subjects when really I wanted to do art subjects. But I could do more science subjects. And I think what it was, when I did my O-levels, I only got a grade D in English literature, but I got a B in English language. So that meant I couldn't do the A-level English. Stupid. But it was a boring literature teacher, and I didn't enjoy the classes. And it's stupid because I read I read a lot of books now, but it wasn't. Anyway, through doing English at school, I got into drama at school, and there was a drama teacher. I did a couple of school plays. I think we did what did we do? I think we did The Devil's Disciple, George Bernard Shaw, and we did Kurt Weill's Down in the Valley, and then I got the bug for it, and I noticed on the school notice board there was an advert for a youth theatre group up the road at the Royal Court Theatre. It was a Royal Court activists, and they were a youth theatre based at the Royal Court. So I toured up there and really nervous, and I watched a couple of shows. I think they did Spring Awakening, and I watched it, and it was in this converted stable at the back of Royal Court. It's not there anymore, but it was called, we used to call it the garage, and it was a long tunnel and a big sort of space at the end of it, and they used to do these shows. And I watched this show and I was blown away. I thought, wow, that's really, really impressive. The quality of the acting was stunning. And so I thought, right, I've got to join this. I was thinking about joining things like the National Youth Theatre, but you had to audition for the National Youth Theatre, so I didn't want to do that. You didn't at the Royal Court, but what you could have at the Royal Court is they used to get directors that were trainee directors at the Royal Court that would practice with you, and then you do shows upstairs at the Royal Court. So it was brilliant. So in that way, I did a few shows at the Royal Court. I did a play called a musical called Don't Blame It on the Boogie, written by Gilly Fraser, that used to be married to Peter Purvis, actually. Yeah. Really good writer. And it was my first experience into sort of drama training, because I did actually try to get into drama school when I was about 16. And I think I tried a couple of schools, and they basically said, come back when you're, older, basically, because you haven't lived. You're 16 years old. So I was a bit devastated by that. So that's when I joined the youth theatre. Yeah. So I did this play at the Royal Court, and then some casting directors came along. And one of the casting directors was a woman called Patsy Pollock. And she was casting for a relatively known film called Quadrophenia. Yeah. Right. So I went up for this casting for Quadrophenia. No, I didn't, no frame of reference. So I went up for this casting, and I met Frank Rodham, the director. I didn't know how to handle myself in an interview before. I didn't have any frame of reference. I didn't go to drama school. I didn't know what to do. So I put on my best version of standard English, received pronunciation, for the whole interview. And he turned around at me and he said, Pete, you've got a great face and stuff. Well, I love your face, that you could be a mod and all that, but we're kind of looking for someone that sounds like a Londoner. And I didn't have the front to say, no, this is what I talk like, because I'm 17 or whatever. And I slid out with tail between my legs. I thought, oh God, I blew that one. However, the casting director was really nice, and she phoned me up and said, look, I think you could maybe get some work, So what I'll do is I'll give you a name of a load of casting directors, write to them, because this is all pre-email and mobile and stuff. Write to them and say I told you to write to them, which was really nice. So I wrote to people like Marilyn Johnson, I can't remember who else, and they wrote back to me, and Marilyn Johnson saw me, and her assistant, Susie Carell, offered me an audition for a play that was going to be for the Oxford Playhouse Company, and then tour around Britain and end up at the Young Vic Theatre. This is like 1978. And it was called Class Enemy by Nigel Williams. Oh. And they'd done it at the Royal Court a couple of years before with Phil Daniels and stuff, and Peter Hugo Daly. And I went up for it, and I got it. And I thought, wow, oh God, hang on. It's like, be careful what you wish for, sort of thing. Really nervous. And it was with a provisional equity card, because you had to be an equity then. So I had to have a provisional equity card. So you had to get so many jobs, and then you get a full equity card. And when I went on tour, I asked every theatre did they have a free equity card, and one of them did, and I eventually got an equity card at the end of it, a blue equity card. Not that it makes much difference anymore, but it did then. And there were great people in the cast. There were people like Mark Wingert, who was in the bill for about 20, 30 years. Mark Wingert was just in Quadrophenia as well. He was like one of the lead people in Quadrophenia. And a guy called Gary Shale, and who was also in Quadrophenia. They just finished Quadrophenia, and they were doing this show. And a guy called Jonathan Moore, who is now, I think, for some odd reason, he became an opera director. And I mean, I never saw that. He was just an Natalia Conti stage school kid. But anyway, he was in it as well. Another great actor called Keith Jane, that was a young actor, had been acting since he was naught, sort of thing. And he had a lot of experience at his own. We were all about 18. And so we went on tour, and it was very sort of kitchen sink. And I became aware at that time of the students from Anna Scher Theatre. And before I'd come across Anna Scher Theatre, you couldn't get into Anna Scher. There was a massive waiting list, and I didn't live in North London and all that sort of stuff. And but I was very impressed by their actors, you know, like Phil Daniels, Phil Davis, and all those people. And it was the first time I'd seen really realistic acting. Before, it was just kind of middle class, kind of young kids from London, you know, doing The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Famous Five on the telly, and it was okay. But I'd never seen Anna Scher kids before, and I thought, wow, this is like, it's like I can't see their acting. I can't see their acting. I was really impressed by it. And so what I used to do is I used to watch what these people did, and I think Mark Wingott had been to the National Youth Theatre, and Gary Shale had been at Arts Educational. So I thought they were good actors. And I used to watch what they do, and I thought, because I hadn't been to drama school, I just watch what they do, see what worked, and then just copy them, you know, work out and just imitate them. And so I, you know, I had imposter syndrome. I thought they're going to catch me out any minute and realise I'm not the real deal. But you know, we got away with it. We got good reviews, and then coincidentally, there was an agent that worked underneath Marilyn Johnson's casting director office. And I wrote to him, and he came and saw the show, and he suddenly took me on. So suddenly I'm 18 and I've got an agent, and he was sending me out for jobs. You know, a guy called Bill Horn, he's no longer alive. He was a great agent, a really nice guy. And you know, suddenly I'm you know, I was auditioning for the Young Vic Theatre, and I worked at the Young Vic Theatre next, I think it was. And I did Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead and Around the World in 80 Days there. And then I went to Stratford East Theatre and did and worked with Adrian Shergold, and also, first of all, the director was Diane Cilento, who was Sean Connery's wife.
Yeah,
she was directing it, and then she got ill when Adrian Shergold took it over. And it was a Victorian melodrama, and it was going to go to the West End. They asked me, did I want to go? But coincidentally, at the time, I'd been up for a TV series, and it was Spearhead, and it was sort of like an early soldier. Yeah. And they'd had one series in Northern Ireland, one in Germany. The one they wanted me to go to was in Hong Kong. So I went to Hong Kong. What's interesting about that is my dad was stationed in Hong Kong, and my dad had a really tough upbringing. I mean, what I know now was probably post-traumatic stress syndrome, but my dad grew up in occupied Denmark. So he saw the tanks coming through down the streets, and you know, the Danes did not like the Nazis, did not like it. They didn't want to be invaded, and they didn't want to join them. And all my dad's family were involved in the resistance. And my dad never talked about it. I gleaned more information from other Danish relatives, and he had quite a tough time there. He was moving guns about, and you know, making explosives with his dad to put on cargo train lines and stuff like that. It's a really awful time. But after the war, because he wanted to get out of Copenhagen, he wound up joining the army. He wound up getting stationed in Hong Kong. And there I was, you know, playing a soldier in Hong Kong. So it was a bizarre sort of mirroring of what he did. Only I was pretending and he wasn't, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So then I got into So I came back from Hong Kong, and then I got an audition for the National Theatre. So I'd work at the National Theatre. I'm working with John Dexter. So John Dexter's boyfriend, who was the choreographer of the show I was doing at the Young Vic, and he put me in touch with John Dexter, and you know, I suddenly had to go to the National Theatre. I think I was about 19, 20, and I had to go and do an audition on the Olivier stage in a Jacobean melodrama, you know, and it was in Jacobean verse. It was called The Shoemaker's Holiday. I thought, yeah, Jacobean, I don't know anything about
Thomas
Jacobean.
Dekker, that, isn't it?
Yeah, Thomas Dekker, yeah.
Yeah.
And there were fantastic people in the cast, like Andrew Cruikshank and Alfred Lynch and Daniel Thorndike and Brenda Bruce and all these really, Nicholas Selby and all these really fantastic actors, you know. And I thought, man, out of my depth here, because most of the people at the National Theatre, they were either Oxbridge or they'd been to drama school.
Yeah.
And you know, I wasn't either. I just in the youth theatre. So again, that was a bit of imposter syndrome. Like, and then I worked with Michael Bogdanov there. I did Le Malade Imaginaire and the Mayor of Zalamea. So yeah, that was my kind of start in like legitimate theatre. How it got into my interest in comedy and variety was, I can't remember exactly what. I do remember where it was. I was about 17 and I was living in pinner at the time with a girlfriend that I met at the youth theatre, and she used to go to these acrobatic classes, right? And I've always been interested in acrobat. I was always quite physical. I used to box at school, and I did a lot of judo. My dad was a fantastic judo player, so I got into judo. And so I was aware of physicality. But this girlfriend, she's got these acrobatics. She says, "Want to come?" I thought, yeah, I want to come. So I met this woman, and she was about 50, and she did a lot of pantomimes and things like that. And she was really fit still, really like supple and strong, and she could still do backflips and handsprings and stuff. And I used to go. It was a very sort of spit and sawdust kind of scout hut, no mats, like coconut matting, very, very basic. And but through her, I found out she'd been trained by this Hungarian circus acrobat, a guy called Eugene Bala, who was a variety acrobat and a circus acrobat. And after I moved back to sort of more central London, I found him out because I met a few people down Covent Garden, because I used to go and watch the acts down there. And I had a few mates that were doing acts. And one of them mentioned this guy. So I used to go to classes with him, Eugene, in his little flat in Brixton. It was a really dirty old guy, and he's dead now. Eugene is a fantastic character. He was must have been about 75, 80 then. Really strict, sort of heavy set Hungarian guy. And I used to go into his flat, and he had a sort of a harness up with rope around it, and a big Alsatian dog that barked at you that was always chained up in the corner. No mat, it was a dusty carpet, and he'd like slap your ass so you'd have to do a somersault really high, no higher, and he'd whack you around. And occasionally he'd bring down loads of photos of his work in like circuses and variety. And he used to his speciality was backward somersaults and handstands, and he was sort of in an act in a barrel. He was inside a barrel, and he used to be able to come out, jump out of the barrel, and then somersault, sort of a gainer somersault, which is a back somersault that goes forward. And he could somersault backwards, even though it was a gainer, for about 1.5 meters. It's really hard to do. So he's doing a back somersault, but instead of just going up like that, he'd go like divers do it, and then they do a back somersault, they're facing forward. And he used to tell me all about this, and that got me really interested. And then I made more friends down Covent Garden, and I used to watch the acrobats down there, and I thought and then round about that time, I was living in Portobello Road, and up the Electric Cinema, they were doing a retrospective of Buster Keaton with a live flautist. And so I went down there with a mate, and you could smoke in those days. So, we were having a spliff and a flapjack and a cup of coffee, and just watching it like 10 hours of Buster Keaton. Like, who is this guy? It's like, because it was black and white and slightly overcranked, it looked like cartoony. You didn't realize somebody could actually do this stuff. And I was just hooked, And then round about the same time, there was a retrospective of I'd read in the Sunday Observer about the granddaughter of Lupino Lane, and talking about Lupino Lane. And I later found out one of the guys I was working with in Class Enemy, Keith Jane, his granddad was an acrobatic tap dancer, and he worked with Lupino Lane. So I've got 2 degrees of separation from Lupino Lane. So I watched this retrospective for Lupino Lane down the NFT. And he was like this incredible acrobatic comedian. It was like a type of English Buster Keaton, although he was more musical comedy, but he could do all the stuff Buster could. And so that really got me interested. And this was kind of pre-videotape. So I bought a little cine camera and a screen down in Piccadilly, and I got some film of Buster Keaton. I used to watch it and slow it down and try to work out how he did all these pratfalls. And round about the same time, I found this fantastic book called How to Become a Comedian by Lupino Lane. And it had cool stick drawings of how to do pratfalls. And
they're amazing.
Look at that.
Yeah, it's a great book. And how to do ventriloquism and how to do double talk. And because Lupino had to fall downstairs. Lupino's Lane family, he came from a commedia family, went right back to the 1600s where they were puppeteers when they came over here. And so that was started my obsession with physical comedy. And round about that time, I formed an act down Covent Garden with a couple of guys, an actor friend of mine that was a very, very good amateur boxer. And he had an act down there as a pink policeman. It was a bizarre, surreal act. And then neighbours of mine, because I was living on the Isle of Dogs then, because there was lots of hard to let council flats that were always given to drama students. So I just wound up on the Isle of Dogs, and I had neighbours like Adrian Dunbar and Neil Morrissey. They were my next door neighbours and stuff like
Bloody
that.
hell.
And so me and Neil were really good mates, and Adrian as well. And Neil, me, and John, this boxer, we formed an act called the Broomstick Men. We were trying to do something completely different, and we all had warehouse coats and old-fashioned alley brooms like Buster Keaton used to hit people. And we had this sort of it was quite surreal. We were just three people, and then we performed these various rituals with the brooms, you know, sort of moving up, like synchronized broom moving. And we had it was sort of like a Masonic group. We had to perform with these rituals, but every now and again one of us would mess it up, and there'd be an argument, and then, oh, well, yeah, you did it, I didn't know, you did it wrong, and then we'd have a massive acrobatic fight, you know, with whacking each other and pratfalls, and then we'd get it together because they all perform the rituals. Anyway, it went down really well. And somebody came and saw it, and they offered us to do it on the Max Headroom show. Do you remember the Max Headroom?
Yes, I do.
Variety acts on it. So we had a clip of the Broomstick Men where it started off where we were all in big, massive brown paper bags on the ground, massive paper bags with our brooms and our hat, flat caps and brown warehouse coats. And then we'd shove the broom up and burst out the bag and do all these rituals. It was very surreal, really. So that was my introduction, and then I became obsessed by other variety acts. I'd find any variety acts and acrobatic variety acts and work out the tricks of the trade, really, you know. And I'd practice, I'd pad up, because I thought, I'm not Buster Keaton, I haven't been doing this until I've got to use pads, so because I would hurt myself, obviously, and whilst I was practicing it. And I was always practicing, you know, catching me fingers in the door and knocking me head and falling downstairs and doing various front falls, back falls, dead back falls and somersault falls and everything I could try to do that Buster Keaton could do. But, you know, obviously he'd had a bit of experience and he was an incredible talent. But that was my interest in it. And I used to, around about that time, there was the International Mime Festival that was happening in London. And I used to think mime was a bit sort of Marceau type of stuff. And I realised it could be other things, you know, like Jacques Lecoq and Philippe Gaulier and stuff like that. And I remember seeing acts like Theatre de Complicité and Moving Picture Mime Company, and they were doing all this incredible physical theatre. I'd never come across this. We were just coming out of the age of variety, Les Dawson and all that sort of stuff, Frankie Howard. And I hadn't realised we'd had this incredible history of variety. So I used to watch these acts and think, from France and Spain and Germany, I thought, wow, this is really incredible, you know. So that started my absolute obsession with physical comedy, and anybody that was thought to be the next best thing, I'd go and watch them. I was particularly impressed by Theatre de Complicité, because they just, it wasn't like you were watching circus acrobatics pratfalling. They made it real, and there was a point, you know, very much like, I mean, you know, yes, you can learn the mechanics of doing a pratfall, but to make it funny is a completely different art. You know, it's what you do before and it's what you do after, and it has to be a reason why you do it. It's not gratuitous kind of crackerjack acting, you know. And I realised slapstick, for it to work, had to be completely believable, and there had to be a reason for it. It wasn't just a pie in the face. It was, why did you get a pie in the face, and all that sort of stuff. And so it started me thinking about physical theatre in a completely different way. So that's how I was developing that side of my stuff. And at the same time, I'd gone back to the Royal Court, and I was I worked with a fantastic female director called Antonia Bird, who sadly died a few years ago now. She was a brilliant director, and she was a theatre director. And I worked with her in theatre, and I worked with her in television, and I worked with her in film. And just before she died, we did a documentary about the first theatre job I did with her, which was a play called Oi for England in about 1982. And we were all skinheads, and it was one of Paul McGann's first job. He'd just come out of drama school. We were all skinheads, and we were in an Oi band. And the whole play was written by Trevor Griffiths, who just died recently, actually. And basically, it was saying you could be into skin music, Oi music, and not necessarily be a fascist. You know, it was that whole, you don't have to just, you're a skinhead, you're not a fascist. And it went down really well. And when we toured around London with that, and then after I worked with Antonio, I started working with Danny Boyle, because he was working with Joint Stock, and I did a play with him called Victory by Howard Barker, and that was Nigel Terry and Julie Covington in it, and so I got to work with Danny. And then after I worked with Danny, then he invited me back to work with him and Max Stafford Clark, and we did a season of Edward Bond plays at the Royal Court. So they were directed by Danny Boyle and Max Stafford Clark. So, and in those plays was Gary Oldman, Joanne Whalley, Adrian Dunbar, and Mark Wingert. And so I had the opportunity of working with people like Gary before he was like an A-lister, and Joanne Whalley and Adrian Dunbar and Peter Hugo Daly. Really great actors. Leslie Manville as well.
I was going to say Leslie Manville was in that season as well.
She got engaged after
one of my
after
one
that
of my
show.
heroes.
The plays were saved in the Pope's Wedding, Edward Bond plays. So I got to work with these fantastic directors, and then I started doing a lot of telly. I did a series in the 80s called Prospects with another fellow actor, black actor, Brian Bovell, that was in The Activist with me, and me and Brian had known each other since we were 16. And it was bizarrely coincidental because I was living on the Isle of Dogs then, and it was all set in the Isle of Dogs. Yeah. So, and it was a kind of a Minder type thing, Euston Films,
It's got prospects. It's got prospects.
Yeah, exactly. As Gary Olsen and Brian Verbell.
I'm going to stop you there because
I want you to.
Prospects, I'm going to wind back in a minute because there are so many things that you've said that are milestones for me, because I'm a couple of literally a couple of years behind you, but Prospects was my very, very favorite TV series of when I was and I watched it religiously. The two of them were one of the best television partnerships ever, I think. Before Only Fools and Horses, before as you said, I mean, they were fantastic together. And going right back, you did Class Enemy, and was it 78? What was it, 78? Something like that. I went to drama school in 79 to Weber, and all of a sudden it was, and I'm a boy from Luton, and I was, I went in there, and everyone said, well, you got to learn your RP, you got to learn your standard English, and I was walking around talking like that, and then suddenly they went, and then all these plays, Saved happens, Bond happens, a Class Enemy. We were. My exam for unarmed combat and armed combat was a scrap from Class Enemy. Yeah. We used that fight. As our scene. I went with that for so long. And then what was it? Where else did you meet? Covent Garden. I worked for a short time in Covent Garden, obviously just after its massive heyday.
Yeah.
But I was also influenced by my big hero was Charlie Chaplin.
Right.
And I was encouraged by a guy called David Boxer. I don't know whether he's still with us. I hope he is, because he was an amazing teacher. He was a mime artist. He went to Lecoq and encouraged me to audition. I auditioned.
He didn't have a brother, Stephen Boxer, did he?
I don't know. Know.
I've worked with the Stephen Boxer with John.
David he did a lot of stuff with Moving Picture Mime, which I worked for a very, very short time. I did a short sum with them, which was more a training than everything else. We did loads of shows at the end of toured them round, and we went back to my my old stamping ground in Luton and did some shows around there, which was wonderful. So there was all these little things. I went, is Pete Løvstrøm? Is he my long lost brother for some reason? There were so many connections, and of course the joy is we worked together. I had the joy of working with you a couple of seasons ago in Brighton at the Open Air Theatre doing. We started off doing One Man Two Governors, which is when I first saw the amazing Pete Løvstrøm and what you physically do. I mean, I worked with a guy called Derek Royal.
Yeah. He did the series Hog on TV, didn't he? Hog's Back.
Did. Yeah. And
great acrobat.
He taught me so much because if people don't know him, he is the dead body in 40 Towers.
Yeah,
that's shoved right. In the wicker basket and carried around.
Yeah.
And he did in the West End. I was understudying him in the West End for Dry Rot, which we're doing with Derek Griffiths and
another good one.
Every day. Yeah. Brilliant. And Derek Roy was playing the jockey in it. And he did this very strange sort of, if you're not away, he just made this gobbledygook French up.
Yeah.
And he did a wonderful pratfall, which is, I remember, there was a stage, and then it took a step down to the forestage. And it was in the foyer of the hotel. There was a whole set in this hotel. And he sat at a bar on a stool, a 4-foot high bar stool. And the barmaid, the housekeeper by Julie Peasgood, who was the sweetest, nicest lady I've ever met, she used to slap him on the back. He would do a forward roll, still holding on to the stool, down the step, and then end up sat on the stool at the other side of the step. Every single night, he never missed it. He never slipped it. He was incredible. And I wanted to learn from him, and I said I'd love to learn how to do that. And he taught me how to do it, and I did it one, and I went on for him a couple of times. Bless his heart.
That's so bizarre, because in this book, like I said, it's actually got how to do that fall.
Wow.
With a chair.
Cool.
Pictorially, can't find it at the moment, but it's I mean, it's an impressive. Interestingly enough, Drew, they on Talking Pictures recently, they've been showing. If you go to the website version of it, they've been showing some of the Hog series. And I've been watching Derek Royal do his stuff. And I was very impressed. There we go.
Yeah, to anyone watching, there's literally how you fall off a stool but go with the stool. Incredible.
It's
courtesy
stunning.
of Luke Lane. Yeah. So it's obviously a trade. It's a kind of stock movement, isn't it, in theatre.
I used to do a little voiceover in the show. And I used to do the little voiceover and then go on my way up to the dressing room right at the top of the Lyric Theatre in the West End. I would pass Derek, and every night he'd stick his head out the door and go, "You finished, son?" Yeah, he said, "Get in here." And I go in, and he'd done his bit for the show. So he'd give me a glass of scotch, and then we'd sit down, and he would teach me stuff. He would teach me how to fall. And we had this reasonably small dressing room, and every night, and Derek Griffiths one night came, he went, knocked on the door, went, "What the fucking hell are you two doing in here?" He said, "All I can hear is you thumping around." It was, he said, and then Derek Griffiths passed on loads of stuff. So that thing of being taught by the greats, and I'm
really envious of that. That's impressive, man.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah, Derek was a genius.
I think there was an element, isn't there, of certainly in certain niches within the business that people become experts and synonymous with doing something, but equally get a huge amount of joy from passing those skills on or educating others. And I think this is a particular area, physical comedy. I mean, I do a little bit of stunt work, Pete, which obviously is in the same realm when it comes to being able to do stuff where you don't hurt yourself or being able to do stuff that looks quite dramatic. But it blows my mind that you can then combine that with comedy. Because those are two very different skills, but you merge them together and they create this amalgamation.
It had made such a big impact on me, Sam, that I was just intrigued by it and thinking about the lineage of comedy. But when I was doing that TV show Spearhead in Hong Kong, a lot of my scenes were with Nicky Lyndhurst, that before he did Only Fools and Horses.
Wow.
And Nicky used to, we were over there for about 3 months, and we had a lot of time off because rather than fly us backwards and forwards to England, they just kept us there in Hong Kong. And so I hung out with Nicky Lyndhurst quite a lot. And he'd memorized loads of Monty Python speeches and stuff that he knew off pat, and he was really, really good at them. And it made me re-look at Monty Python again afterwards. And then I had the good fortune of having a week's work doing a Monty Python film. I was in a film called The Meaning of Life. So I worked with John Cleese and Terry Jones and stuff, and they were really, really nice people. Like, I had this too, I had a tagline for a joke. Yeah. So the scene in Meaning of Life was, I'm a skinhead in it, because I just done a film about a skinhead as well, and it was just after the show. So my hair was. So I'm a skinhead, and Terry Jones is my mum. He's dressed up as a woman. Yeah. And we're in this house. It was like shot in Elstree or Pinewood. I can't remember where. And there's a knock at the door. And John Cleese there and someone else, I forget who was with him. And they said, "We're from the Liver Donors Society." And Terry Jones said, "Yeah, well, what do you want?" He said, "Well, I understand you've got a liver donors card." So he said, "Yes, I have." He said, "Well, we liked your liver." And he said, "Well, I'm not dead." He said, "Well, that's neither here nor there, sir." And they pushed him into the living room, slung him on the dining table, and started ripping his guts open. And they had loads of cow's bloods and cow's offal and intestine. chucking them about, and there's all this blood and pumping blood, and they're ripping his guts out. And whilst they're doing this and he's screaming, I'll pop my head round the corner and say, right, Dad, I'm on for that now. I'm back about 7. And that was it. You know, that was the gag. And it was that they were so nice. They had this sort of foresight of, you know, it was all shot on cinema, on film then, right? So, you know, usually you have to wait till it got developed before you could see the rushes. But they had the sort of foresight of taping a video camera that was quite new then to the side of the camera, so they could immediately look at the tape without waiting for it to be developed. So they would on a monitor. They said, "You happy with that, Pete? Do you want to do that again, or do you want to have a crack at it?" And you know, this is John Cleese. I think, okay, Mr. Cleese, yeah. Oh, do you want? Can we do that again? And he said. So I was very impressed with them, and so I start looking at, you know, 40 Towers and stuff, and then realised the obvious connection with Commedia. You know, it was that they're classic Commedia characters, and I just thought it was genius. You know, like Manuel and you know, and the Major, and you know, there was all the stock Commedia characters. You know, Arlecchino and Puccinello and blah blah blah, and I just became so impressed with physical comedy, because I'd kind of grown up seeing crackerjack comedy, which was, you know, and sort of Charlie Caroli and stuff, and I'd never really seen a circus clown that made me laugh. Now, Lupino Lane made me laugh, and Buster Keaton made me laugh, but I'd never seen a circus clown made me laugh. And then I'd see people like Theatre for Complicity, and they were doing pratfalls and slapstick, but they were doing it meaningfully and truthfully. And so it kept the suspension of disbelief. And you know, the whole point of I read a great book that my son bought me called The Naked Jape by Jimmy Carr, that analyzes the whole kind of field of comedy. And, you know, it's the shock of seeing somebody fall over and then realizing they're not her, and then realizing it's not you. And that's what makes you know, if you can see it's been constructed, it's not funny. It's just, even if it's a really impressive fall, it's not funny.
It's all about natural, isn't it? It's about things that look absolutely real. Because it's, as you say, it's you don't want it to look forced. You don't want it to look preset or over engineered. It's about making it look natural.
Absolutely. I mean, I used to love watching out of towners come into the tube and try and master the escalators. Now, I don't even think about escalators anymore, so I don't look at my feet going off at when you come bottom or the top. But when you get people from out of town and they've never been on an escalator, they struggle to time it to get off and on, and sometimes they trip and fall off, and I used to find that hysterical. And it's not seeing what they did when they tripped or they fall over. It's kind of, they either look down at the step as if the step's fall, or they look over their shoulder to see if anyone's seen them. And I'd all take all this sort of stuff in and stuff, but yeah, I was thinking, I wound up living in Danny Boyle's flat. He had a council flat in Mile End, and he kind of signed it over to me. And I was doing a series. I just finished a series, Widows. They did 2 series of that, but I was still at the Royal Court. And I went to a rap party after rehearsals one day, and it was a messy Euston Fields rap party. Everybody's a bit drunk, a bit stoned and stuff. And I was getting egged on to do a back somersault. And I thought, I'm a little bit all over the place there. So I don't, and I go on, Pete, do one. They all clap round in a circle. And I did a back somersault landing. They said, no, you could do higher. I remember you did it higher. And I was like, and it's strangely enough, I borrowed a quid out of everybody in the cast to get me a cab to get to this thing. So Jan Wally, Leslie Banville, Gary Oldman, Mark Winger, Peter Daly, Adrian, they all lent me a quid to get a cab. Right. And I did this second somersault. There was some beer on the ground. I landed, but I slipped, knocked my head, spark out. Party ended. I'm carted off an ambulance, coma for 2 weeks. I lost about 2 stone. And strangely enough, just before that accident, I'd had the casting for Prospects, and I thought I'd messed it up. Gary Olsen actually went on for me at the Royal Court, and then I went back to the Royal Court because it was so successful. We did a really long run of the 2 Bond plays, and for some unbelievable stroke of luck, they gave me the job of Prospects even after the accident. But it just made me very wary about acrobatics and alcohol, so I didn't do that anymore. But Yeah, you've got to be really careful. You've got to absolutely know what you're doing. And, you know, I had quite a strong gymnastic background and acrobatic background, but you've got to really. It's fun. It's funny because moving to Brighton, I came in contact with Patrick Kearns, who gave me a lot of opportunities to work in theatre again, because I've been doing loads of telly and all that type of stuff. And he helped me meet Chris Jordan, who was the artistic director of the Devonshire Park Theatre. And I sent a tape of me doing some acrobatics and pratfalls in my flat, just with a phone. And he said, yeah, okay, you can play Alfie, this 80-year-old like got a guy with what's it called, shell shock, and he had hearing problems. And I'd have to fall off the stage, you know, into which was really like during the performance, you know, backwards, not seeing where I'm landing and stuff. And so I got another opportunity, even though I'm getting, you know, I'm not 16 anymore, 17. So doing pratfalls now, I've got to know what I'm doing and stuff. And But working with this guy, Patrick Kearns, he gave me loads of opportunities because he was doing shows like, you know, the Lady Killers, which I did with Drew, and then we did the one man.
We know him very well, mate.
Yeah,
we know him
he's
well.
Great. I mean, he's just he just really has been really good to me as a friend and a producer and a director. He's a great guy. I got a lot of respect for him and his wife, and I got to do some great stuff with them.
Well,
mate,
has to be said, he preceded you on the show. So
yeah.
You have to go back and have a watch, yeah?
Well, yeah, just a quick wind up. I'll just leave you with a quick anecdote. Years ago...
you know the show better than we do, mate. Go on,
what happened was a friend of mine was a greengrocer in Belsize Park, and he met lots of people that came in there, and one of them was a producer and at television. I think it was Channel 4, and he said, listen, they're making a documentary about Buster Keaton called A Hard Act to Follow, and they're going to premiere it and at the Palladium, and they're going to have the Wren Orchestra there, and they're going to show The General, and which was one of his feature films, and they're going to show the first episode of Hard Act to Follow, and he got me a ticket. So I went with a girlfriend at the time, a girl called Gabby Calvin, and we went and saw this, and I was just blown away to see The General with the Wren Orchestra, Carl Davis, and what happened was Eleanor Keaton, Buster Keaton's widow, came over to host it. And I thought, flipping heck, you know. So I had a little kind of dictaphone, and I taped her speech because I was sitting in like the third row. And then afterwards, I mean, I had a bit more chutzpah then. And what happened was we came out in the foyer, and Ella Keaton was there, and Carl Davis, and they were all chatting with dignitaries. And I kind of muscled my way in to this, you know, obviously high class conversation. I said, Mrs. Keaton, do you mind if I have a little word, and could you sign my program? She said, yeah, sure. And I said, and she was signing my program, which I've still got. And I said, Mrs. Keaton, I've been a fan of your late husband, Buster. You know, I was about 21. And I said, I've been a fan of Buster for about 10 years. He said, you know what? I've been a fan a lot longer. So in the Kevin Bacon's 7 Degrees of Separation, I'm like, you know, I'm 2 away from Buster Keaton, aren't I? Wow. Well, 1 of them again.
Incredible. They don't come much better than the...
No, that made my day. I just thought, you know, it was as near as I was going to get Buster. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, mate, you've made my day to coming on today. It's been brilliant. I knew it would be wonderful to speak to you and have you on. I mean, I always enjoy being in your company, let alone working with you. So it's just so nice of you.
You too. I'm a massive fan of your work as well. So
bless your heart.
God, stop bigging each other up, for fuck's sake. It's much more fun when we pick like fun at each other and take the mick. But no, genuinely, Pete, it's been an absolute joy having you on. A proper pleasure, mate, and an honour to chat to you. And it's been. He's gone, ladies and gentlemen. We've lost Pete.
And on that note, no.
Back in the room.
No coma today. We're safe for now. No, honestly, Pete, thank you again so much, mate. We'll get you back on at some point. We'll try and do some live stuff as well. Maybe we can get a few proper pratfalls and show people what you're about.
Sure.
But people have got to check out your work and see what you've got going on, and we'll catch up again soon. Thank you again, mate. It's been an absolute joy. Really.
Likewise, mate. It's been a pleasure talking to both of you.
Lovely
job. Take care of yourself, mate. We'll see you soon. Cheers.
See you soon. Bye.
But there was never any doubt that Pete would be able to finish with some crazy story, some entertaining anecdote, and I think that certainly fits the bill. But I guess that covers him in general. What a fascinating, talented, mad person! Like to have been involved in so many different things, and to make a career off something that perhaps other people would say what a weird thing to think you want to do or think you'd want to go into. Just intriguing, but a man who has seized the day, gone with it, steered into the skid, whatever you want to say, and just clearly absolutely adores doing what he does and has done for some time.
I mean, he's got an incredible back catalogue of work, and you know, I mean, his way through and into the business is fascinating. And obviously, I mean, you know, you have to take a breath after meeting him because he just knocks you off your feet, quite literally in some instances. But
exactly that. As we've established, he tends to take the brunt anyway. So most of the time, you're probably all right. But no, it's been, as we said to him, just an absolute pleasure having him on. What a wonderful guest to finish our collection of season 11 guests. Everyone this season has been fabulous, haven't they? And yeah, just a brilliant way to end chatting to the lovely Mr. Pete Løvstrøm. So thank you, Pete, for coming on and joining.
Joy to have him.
And yeah, and then, well, that's kind of it for guests this season, mate. As I said, that's
well, it's just the best ofs coming up soon. You know, you and me to round it off next week. We'll have a little round off next week, and
yeah, we've got
where we are
next week. No falling over, no beating each other up or crashing into things or anything like that. We'll do our normal car crash podcasting without actually any danger to either of us. I think it's probably the best way of doing it.
Because let's face it, we're not insured. Who would insure us? I mean,
no, that's true. Let's just hope Equity aren't listening, because we are insured by Equity, technically.
We are. Yes, what am I saying?
So we're doing everything above board. Nothing is risky. We promise. Everything is as it's supposed to be. But yeah, so from the manic and entertaining world of Pete Løvstrøm to us next week, putting a sort of an ending to season 11, and after that a couple of best of episodes. It's
lovely stuff.
We do a pretty damn good job, mate, if you don't mind me saying. I think what we kind of managed to get out there turns out to be all right, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, no one can say we don't cover all the bases, Sam. Eh? We certainly get around and about with our guests and our subject matter and our content. We try and cram it all in. And let's not forget, season 12 will be swiftly following those best of episodes.
Yeah,
then there'll be
We're
more.
about a month away from a new season, so stick with us for the last few, and we'll see what happens. But till then, mate, cheers to you.
Cheers to you, Sam.
And everyone else, we'll see you next week for episode 13 of season 11, the last episode of just me and him. Take it easy. Thanks again to Pete.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thanks again for watching this episode of Drewling Samantics.
Please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video.
Don't forget, we're also available as audio only. Just search Drewling Samantics in any good podcast app. And please support us on social media. All our links and handles are on screen now.
We love welcoming new followers and subscribers, so why not share with your family and friends so they can join in too? Thanks very much. See you next time.